One and
Hello and welcome to The Softer Side on AGK Media. I'm Shelley Carney. And today we're going to be talking about what it's like to be a life coach or to have a life coach in your life. So let's get started.
I hate to bug you about this because let me just do this. Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
Okay. Now let's get started.
I don't know why I don't switch it over to here when we do this show. Okay.
Now let's get started. Can we have our first slide, please?
Yes, you can. First slide coming up.
All right. So we're going to talk about what is a life coach. And part of that is defining what a life coach does. And we'll get into that in just a moment. But next, we're going to talk about our background. So I am a certified integrative wellness and life coach. I took classes at IWA, the Integrative Wellness Academy, and earned my certificate as a life coach last year. Toby is a wonderful mentor and instructor. He's been an instructor for a college course that he also created the curriculum for. He has been a father of 6. He coached girls soccer for 17 years, and he's been a mentor, of course, and he's also been a consultant working with people as a company or one-on-one to improve their performance and basically in the digital media field. So we're both qualified to be life coaches. In this series today, we're going to start talking about what a life coach does, the differences between coaching and therapy, and we'll talk about self-assessment tools that you can use too. If you're in our live chat room, I hope that you'll take a moment to say hello, share where you're from, ask questions, and we're going to get to your questions at the end of the presentation. Share your story. If you have something that you feel relates to you, please share that with the room and support other people in the room. If you have questions you'd like to ask privately or you want to suggest topics for future videos, please email me at TheSofterSide.info@gmail.com, and you can visit my website at TheSofterSide.info. I hope you'll also take a moment to like this video with a thumbs up, share it with your social media contacts and anybody who might be interested in this topic, and then make sure you subscribe to AGK Media and The Softer Side on YouTube. So what is a life coach? What a life coach does is we help people move forward and set personal and professional goals that give them the life they really want. This is really good for people who feel good about themselves, but maybe they're stuck. They want to turn their life from being good to being great. So who needs a life coach? Our clients are healthy, successful people who want to make a big change in their lives, and they want the support that a coach can offer. So basically, like maybe you're making a career change, maybe there's a change in your relationship, you're surviving a divorce or a death in the family, and you need something to help get you unstuck and moving forward again. That's the people who like to work with life coaches and can find a lot of success there. As for certification, there's no singular regulator, licensing body, or governing board for life coaches. So use at your own risk. The life coaches can either have gone through classes such as I have, or they can be an experienced person like Toby who is ready and willing to listen to people, help them set goals, and improve their lives. But what defines a life coach? Many life coaches focus on a particular niche, as I've mentioned, such as divorce recovery or grief recovery or changing careers. There might be a business coach that focuses on people who want to grow their own personal business. So look for the person who covers the area where you feel you have the most needs. Guidelines are followed by all reputable life coaches, and we'll go over those guidelines now. A life coach encourages a safe space that makes their clients feel comfortable to share their background, their history, their dreams, their goals, what's been getting in the way of their goals, and what sort of help that they need. And they need to be able to share that honestly and openly, so the life coach has to make them feel comfortable and ready to share. Life coach also assists clients to break their goals down, or take their dreams, turn them into goals, and take those goals and create action steps to transition from where you are now to where you want to go. A life coach says to their clients, where you're at right now is fine, it's perfect, it's perfectly good, you're not broken, you're not in trouble, you have the answers already and you can access them, and I'm just going to help you to get to those answers that are inside of you. They honor you, the client, and they honor where you're at present, yet they help you to work towards where you want to go, those goals, those dreams that you have. A life coach actively listens. That means they're not thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about what they might say back to you. They're just sitting there very carefully listening, maybe taking notes, finding out exactly what it is that you want and what's been getting in your way. And they can then focus on a life plan with you, creating those questions that help you get to the deeper levels of what's going on in your life and what you need to overcome to get to the next level. It's all about you with a life coach. They aim to motivate, offer emotional support, and create confidence in their clients. In other words, empowering you to understand that you have all the tools you need, and we're just there to facilitate your growth, because sometimes it's very hard to grow on your own without somebody just pushing you, making you focus on what it is you really want and taking those action steps to get there. Life coach provides accountability and challenges clients to step outside their comfort zone. And that means you come to a session and they're going to check in with you. So last session you said you wanted to do ABC. How's that going? And how's that working for you? They'll be asking you a lot of questions to provide that accountability partner that everybody seems to need at some point in their life to stay on track and not just let things go because, well, it was windy and rainy outside, so I didn't feel like going to the gym, or, you know, something that just gets in your way. But when you have that accountability partner, you know, oh, they're going to ask me if I did this, this, and this, so I'd better do it. And that gives you that push to make things happen. Here's some factors about life coaching. When we say life coaching is not, okay, life coaching is not therapy or counseling. A therapist has a degree and is licensed by the state to practice. They can offer help to those who are mentally ill, and counselors can offer somewhat the same. They also have to be licensed as well. So life coaching is not therapy and it's not counseling. So if you find your needs are deeper than just what a life coach can offer, you would want to contact a therapist or counselor. They don't offer medical advice. They work with your medical professionals. If you have a plan of action from your medical doctor, a life coach will help you stay on track with that plan that you've got from your doctor. They do not offer medical advice. Life coaching is also not judging or criticizing. They're not going to come at you and say, well, you're doing that all wrong. No wonder you're such a mess. You just really need to learn about, this, and that will fix your life. They're not going to be authoritative and demanding. They're not going to tell you what to do. They're not going to say, oh, you're doing that wrong, so change that and do this instead. They're going to start asking you questions. How is that working for you? And making you come up with these answers for yourself. How is that working for me? It's not working very well. What should I do instead? And if you ask your life coach, what should I do instead? They will either ask you, what do you think you should do? Or they might offer several different choices that might work for you that you can choose from. Life coaching is also not friendship. You can't buy a life coach friend. They are not there to be your friend. They are there to hold you accountable for what it is you want and to push you. Friends don't always do that for you. They just, if you say, I don't feel like going to the gym today, a friend is like, me neither, let's watch Netflix. So it's not about friendship, and it's not about a dating. So if you do feel an attraction to a person who is a life coach, do not engage them as a life coach, because that becomes unprofessional if it turns into sort of a spicy dating situation. And, life coaching is about being professional and meeting your needs in a professional manner. Now you may be wondering, how can I coach myself? Is there a way I can do that I don't have to spend the money on a life coach? I think I can manage this. Well, you can start off with a self-assessment. What is it that I want out of life in all these different areas? And then pinpointing those things that are most important to you in each of those areas to accomplish, and then coming up with a plan to accomplish those. It requires a lot of self-discipline, because you don't have somebody who's going to be doing that for you, keeping you organized and pushing you and telling you how to create habits and move toward your goals. You need a support system. If you've got a great partner, if you've got a great husband or a wife or a parent or a child who is really supportive of you and is constantly there on your side, then that's really going to be helpful if you're going through some difficult changes. Accountability. It's always good to have an accountability partner. If you have a super amount of self-discipline and self-integrity, and every time you make a promise to yourself, you come through on it, then that's personal accountability. But if you need something more to keep you going, you need an accountability partner. Organizational skills. This comes with a life coach, because they're keeping track of what you said during your session, what you said you wanted, what you said you were going to do. And when you don't use a life coach, but you want to coach yourself, you have to keep track of that. Here's what I said I was going to do. I put it in my calendar. I made it happen. You can do that if you have good organizational skills. And also journaling. Journaling is amazing for anybody, and that's basically just writing down your discoveries of the day. How am I feeling? Why do I feel that way? What caused that feeling? Do I like this feeling? Do I want to repeat it? You need a lot of introspection when you're writing in your journal, and you should be doing this daily. Now, these are the things you're going to need to do if you want to be a life coach for yourself. Let's talk about that self-assessment that we started with. Here are some questions you can be asking yourself to do that self-assessment. What specific goals would I like to meet, and why? So you need to pick out these dreams, turn them into goals, and find out what is your why. Why do I want that new car? Why do I want that new relationship? Why do I want that new job? What does it mean? What am I chasing? What will it mean when I get there? These are all important questions to ask and answer. Then ask, what have you already done towards achieving your goals? Look at those successes and say, I did this and this and this, and then I stopped. Why did I stop? What got in my way? I did have some progress. So make sure you celebrate that progress and take a look at what stopped you. How will you define and evaluate success? Success means something different for everybody. I suggest that it is something that you should have internally, that you should be having that's lasting. And sometimes we choose money or an amount of money as a goal, and we define success when we reach that amount of money in our bank account, or we buy that special car or house or whatever it is we're saving up for. That defines our success. But if you do something like that, you will find that once you get there, once you have that car, once you have that amount of money in your bank account, you haven't changed. So it doesn't feel like a success. So you need to have something that goes along with that, that is, when I get here, I will feel more confident, I will feel this way or that way, and then reach for that feeling. And then you'll know, I feel confident, I feel happy, I feel healthy, I feel strong, I can lift this much weight. When you reach those goals that you have set up that define success for you, then you'll know you're there and you can celebrate. The act of life coaching yourself or working with a life coach requires a lot of commitment. So you need to ask yourself, what is the biggest change you're willing to make today to get to your goals? So if you're not reaching your goals, there's probably a change that's needed, because what got you here won't get you there. On a scale from 1 to 10, how committed are you to making this change? You need to really think about that and then answer it for yourself. Write it down. Write it on a whiteboard and say, I am on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm a 10 to getting this done. I am totally committed. If you're not a 10 and you're only a 5, ask yourself, what would it take for me to get to a 6? Once you're there, what would it take for me to get to a 7? So take those small incremental steps to get to a level of commitment where now you're ready to make that change. And then ask yourself, what is one thing you'll do right now to begin this change? And maybe it's just changing your mind. Maybe it's coming up with some ideas. Maybe it's brainstorming. Maybe it's writing a journal for the first time. These are things you can do immediately to start making those changes. Let's have a recap of what we just talked about. So life coaching is focused inspiration to grow and change. That's what it's about. It's focusing on your life, on the things that are working and the things that are not, and figuring out a way to make life better. It's not therapy. If you have had traumas, if you have depression, if you have eating disorders, if you have any sort of mental illness, and it could be mild mental illness like depression because you're experiencing grief, but it's something that you cannot pull yourself out of, then I would recommend a therapist rather than a life coach, or working with a therapist and then a life coach. We're talking about honest self-assessment. That's your first step. Where am I? Why am I here? What have I already accomplished? How can I do more? And then self-discipline and support are really important. They're really necessary to make that change. So make sure that you are working on your self-discipline and that you have the support of your family, friends, and community to make these changes. What is coming up next? Well, giving you an assignment. Do the self-assessment test that we've talked about, and then in the next section, we're going to be talking about 4 main life systems, including the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, as well as the inside-out, outside-in coaching methods, and how those can help you to begin to make changes more quickly because you're attacking them from all sides at once. So thank you so much for listening today. At this point in time, we are ready to have a discussion. So, Toby, how do you feel about life coaching? What do you think?
I think as a mature adult, who's led, any length of life, you have to be prepared to life coach. Assuming your experiences are strong, I think one of the requirements of life coaching is that you have a healthy sense of self as well, because if you're being, for lack of a better way to describe it, self-destructive, then you can't help anybody anyway, right?
Until you help yourself, right?
So the first part is making sure that you help yourself. My first experience with what you refer to as life coaching, I didn't know at the time, was when I transitioned, when I left college and joined the military. Because by the time I joined the military, I was older than most of the people that I was going through basic training with. And what I discovered is a lot of those people weren't prepared for what they were experiencing, especially in preparation for what at the time was the Vietnam War. And so I ended up having conversations with men that were probably 2 or 3 years younger than me, but hadn't experienced enough in life to have gained that necessary self-confidence and maturity. Mm-hmm. And fortunately I had. By the time
Plus you were the oldest in your family,
that's right.
So the older brother kind of sets in with you.
Exactly, and having lost my father when I was 11, mm-hmm. it put an additional pressure on me to be a better person rather than just kind of collapse around everything. Mm-hmm. By the time I got out of the service, I had 2 children, and the process of raising children started. When I got old enough, I started coaching. When the children got old enough, I started coaching. And I decided not to coach the boys because I didn't play soccer. Right. I decided to go with the girls that would give me time to learn the game, et cetera, et cetera. But coaching girls soccer was one of the most positive influences in terms of life coaching on my life, because they are at the same time strong and confident and then still little girls. And so you had to learn how to deal with that. And of course, as the children grew, we ended up having 6 children. And as the children grew, more and more requirements. And then some of the things that I did with in life, having to sell for myself, on behalf of myself, because I was an independent contractor, dealing with government officials who were responsible for the contracting age, committing to projects that literally nobody else wanted. And then in later years in life, after things had settled down, I started teaching at public access stations in Fairfax, a suburb of Washington, for a while in Miami, for a while in San Francisco, and then, as you know, when we worked together here in Albuquerque. And again, I was teaching very technical subjects, and very technical subjects can be very intimidating to students who just want to make a television program, right? And they don't know what's all behind it in order to accomplish that. So it can be very intimidating. So you end up not only teaching in a way that you would be coaching a group of 10-year-old girls who are playing soccer, you also have to understand what their real fears are and why they can't get past these certain areas. And so it actually changed the way in which I was designing courses so that they weren't so technically stringent, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it was easy for me because I could go right down the line. You do these 10 things, you do it in this order. Here's the possible failure points, etc. That was way more than they could tolerate in terms of what they were accomplishing. Mm-hmm. So I had to reconfigure all my courses in terms of what they needed rather than what I could provide. And that was a really good life coaching lesson. I think as any of us go through our lives, that there's all these things that if we're prepared for, if we're willing to, because you also have to be willing to provide that kind of, provide that, I want to say the confidence, provide being willing to help someone else.
Giving them those wins.
Yeah, exactly.
So they can build their confidence.
And Shelley has heard me say this, probably 2,000 times. But I used to tell my my soccer teams and eventually my children, winning builds confidence, losing builds character. So you are going to have some losses, but the key element of a loss is not to let it bring you down, to learn from it, to see what you did right, what you did wrong, and what you have to take into the next situation of this kind in order to make it a win. So as you probably well know, as because you are certified, a lot of the things that come in your certification process are things that you're not learning for the first time. They're just reinforcing what you've learned through life. You raising children and being a spouse of 35 years. You know, you'd have to be a hell of a good life coach to be married for 35 years in this day and age. And so I think the advantage is that we all have acquired, most of us, some of the skills that are necessary to make a good life coach. And the difference between us that have acquired the skills is going through the process of being certified, so that you can have that further confidence to start advising people. I've never seen you, as long as I've known you, I've never seen you give bad advice to someone. It might be advice that I say to myself, well, that's not what I would tell that guy, you know, because I would have probably taken a tougher angle on it. But I've never seen you give bad advice. You always seem to give the kind of advice that individual needs. And maybe that's another point that as part of life coaching, no two people are the same.
Exactly. That's why you really need to be selective when you're looking for a life coach. You want somebody that fits in with your personality. If you want somebody who is going to be really tough on you and make you accountable for everything you say and do, then you want somebody who's been in the military, because they've been through that with you know, their boot camp training and their and all of the training that they've been through. They've had to be very accountable for everything they say and do while they're in the military. So that's something you'd want to look for. If you want somebody who's going to be a little softer, you know, even if, you know, both of them were coaching in the same area, say we're both coaching, relationship coaching for men, say we were both doing that, and you want to say, okay, do I want somebody a little, you know, who's going to be a little more easy on me, or do I want somebody who's going to be tough on me? And then you can make that decision yourself.
And it all depends on your personality type, too. Some people respond better to that soccer coaching style of coaching versus your, you know, confessional style of coaching. I don't know how to describe it. It always feels good. So as far as rough around the edges as I am, I get my coaching from this lady right here, because she always knows what's wrong and generally how I can fix it. Because I don't expect her to fix it. She expects that I'm going to figure out how to fix it.
Yeah, we are each other's life coach.
Yeah,
exactly.
In fact,
whenever I have some sort of issue that I'm like, I don't know how to deal with this, I can't come up with, you know, what I'm going to do about it, then I will come to Toby and I'll say, what should I do? Blah, blah, blah. And he'll like, well, if it was me, I would do this. Have you thought about trying that? He gives me some options, and it's very helpful.
So you want to say hi to the folks in the room?
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of people in there today. Joe S.
That's
says,
all
hi,
right.
y'all. Karen Warner says hello for everybody, and I think she said she's from Boston. Tony Driver's in the room. Lauren West. Robert Selinsky.
Yeah.
Yeah, Karen says she's hello from Boston.
All right.
Patricia Marin says
hello. Hola.
Saludos. Joe S. from Texas, and K-Pro, she says she's sorry she's late. There's no need to apologize.
That's all right.
And Heather Dawn Angel Hetrick Brown says hi, Toby and Shelley.
Oh, well, hello. Thank you for being here today, everybody. Appreciate you being in our chat room. Is there any questions that you have about what it's like to work with a life coach, or discerning if that's the right move for you? Please put them in the chat room at this time, and we'll answer that for you. In the meantime, I think I've done all of my slides.
You have.
Okay. So let's talk about tonight. We'll be back this evening on our Forest Fen Friday Fandango.
Yes, we will.
We have a special guest, Sassy Sherry.
We're going to give her the first part of the show. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have some text messages that we have to read, some emails that we have to read. We have a snail mail. A letter that we have to read.
Fascinating letter.
But we're going to dedicate at least the first half of our show to Sassy. Now, the challenge for us is going to be that because we're bringing her in through Zoom, and because we feed Zoom into OBS, we're going to have to go back to our screened background. There's not going to be any nice
fancy
background.
Stuff.
I don't know if I can make a transition after she's left, because we're using Zoom, and once you use Zoom, it takes over the camera. basically. So we're going to have a lot simple background, but what we want to do is give you the opportunity via text and in the chat room to ask questions of her. We can't use the phone with her because because we're using Zoom, she can't hear the questions. But if you send us text messages, I can read them to her. So we're looking for a fun evening. I've spoken with her a couple of times this week, and she has some new thoughts. Her interest in the Fen treasure. I don't know if you remember the first conversation we had with her. She didn't quite say that she wasn't interested in searching for the Fen treasure, but that she didn't have the time, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But since that conversations, and as the result of a couple of conversations after that, she has energized her desire to find the Fen treasure, and as a result she went back and looked at all the material, including the poem and the book, and came up with something I thought was not there. So we're going to talk to her about that tonight, and I'm hoping that the result of it is a re-energizing of the search community, and maybe that explosion that Dale Neitzel mentioned recently that he was looking for. So
all right, so no questions, but we will be back next week again on Friday. Oh, Huli has something to say.
Yeah, she says, some employers' health insurance companies will pay for life coaching. In case this appeals to anyone here, you may want to look into it.
Okay, that's very good to know. Don't count on it being paid for, but do look into it, find out if it is. Very often they would pay for something that was medical or licensed, like a therapist or a counselor, but they may not pay for a life coach because, it's not a licensed to practice profession.
So Heather Dawn wants to know, Shelley, does your husband ever get jealous of Toby?
If he does, he keeps it to himself. He's never ever said anything. He likes Toby because he knows that I'm spending my days doing something productive. I'm safe. I'm well fed. I have somebody else to complain about besides him. And so he feels really good about it, I think.
And we're good friends. He and I are good friends. We have a lot in common. He grew up not the same way that I did, but he grew up with the same kind of attitudes that I did. So although he's not quite young enough to be my son, is he? No. He's 15. How old is he?
57.
Yeah, so he's 13 years younger than me. But we do a lot of things together, including things like putting up shelves in my new garage and going looking for Fen's treasure and stuff like that. So he's a good friend, and I've always thought of him in that way. And although I've never made a particular commitment that I would ensure the quality of life for your wife when she's with me, I think he knows that I'm going to treat her like a daughter, basically. I treat Shelley like one of my daughters, and she gets the same attention and care that one of my daughters would. So let's see. AGK Media, has Sassy's info inspired you to rejoin the chase?
She would have to give us a whole lot more specific stuff, I think, but maybe she will tonight. I don't know.
Yeah,
she's hinted around at some stuff.
We haven't gotten quite deep enough into what she has to say to see if it does change our opinion on the matter. I do know that in my early when I started looking at the chase back in 2013, I researched some of the areas that she's going to talk about tonight, and I didn't find them very constructive. So nothing she said thus far has caused us to re-enter the chase. Capro says, Toby and Shelley, did you get any feedback on the Wednesday night show? Being some political discussion, was not sure what you received as feedback. It was about 50-50. We got, if you look at the feedback we're getting, is basically the thumbs up and thumbs down, which are it's the first video we've ever had that had more thumbs down than thumbs up. But that was expected. We don't necessarily think of it as political. I thought that was interesting, that it was perceived as political and leaning towards one side or the other. As a former intelligence analyst, I can tell you I deal in facts. Politics doesn't enter into it. I look at the real world, determine what is the state of the real world in the context of who I am. And I responded to an email that said, you've taken a side. And I responded to the email by saying, I'm on the side of America, democracy, liberty, the Constitution, and the rule of law. That's the side that I'm on. And that's what you'll hear when you listen to our show. So yeah, we have, the feedback has been mixed. There has been positive feedback like, wow, you guys are really doing something different here. And negative feedback like, no, just stick to the fan treasure, or don't take sides, or I hear enough about politics. We're not talking politics. We're talking about the state of the union. And the state of the union is important to me because I'm an American. So let's see. Heather Dunn, thank you for answering. Y'all are a hoot and a half, says Joe S. And Huli says, thanks. That's all we got.
Great. So next week, tonight we have the show at 7
p.m.
Next week, back to Wednesday, Hump Day Hoedown at 1 o'clock. And then what you should know is still going to come back Wednesday night at 7.
And we're going to be talking about why I think Julian Assange will spend part of the rest of his life in a federal supermax prison.
And the difference between journalism and what he did. All right. And so looking forward to that. And then we'll be back with the softer side next week to talk about the 4 main life systems: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and the inside out, outside in coaching method that gives you wings to get to your goals.
I would like to have some wings.
Wings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So thank you all so much for being here today, for all your great questions and comments, and for The Softer Side on AGK Media. I'm Shelley Carney.